Every so often, a story helps point out a bigger systemic problem in our country. Today, that small story comes from Gaston County, North Carolina. That's where 59-year-old James Verone is sitting in jail. He was arrested for robbing a bank. That's his first offense on an otherwise clean record. He walked into the bank, unarmed, handed the teller a note demanding $1, then sat down and waited for the police to show up. Now, he may sound crazy, but he's not insane. He's actually just sick. Mr. Verone has a long list of ailments, including back and foot injuries, but he can't afford the health care coverage since he lost his job as a Coca-Cola delivery man. Verone wanted to go to jail for the free health care. His former employer, Coke CEO Mukhtar Kent, probably won't be resorting to such extremes anytime soon. He made nearly $25 million last year. In fact, that astronomical pay is typical for CEOs. The common wisdom is that talent is what earns you those really big bucks. LeBron James, Oprah Winfrey, J.K. Rowling, each of them has an amazing talent that justifies their huge paychecks, right? But of the top 0.1% of earners in this country, that's the guys making $1.7 million or more a year, only 3% are sports or media superstars. The majority, about 60%, are corporate executives. And they've gotten really good at taking all the money out of the system. Since the 1970s, the middle class pay has remained stagnant, but corporate executive pay is up nearly 400%. The gap is among the biggest in the world. The CIA World Factbook uses the Gini coefficient as an indicator of economic inequality. The U.S. ranks right between Cameroon and Jamaica on that scale. Congratulations to us. Canada, the United Kingdom, and even China are all doing better than we are. It's not just Mr. Verone that's sick. This whole system is sick. We're turning into a third world country where a few rich people rig the system to get all the benefits while the rest of us have to figure out how to survive. Corporate power is out of control and merciless. We need to regain our democracy. Now, let's talk about that. Joining me now is Yale University political science professor Jacob Hacker. He's a co-author of Winner Take All Politics, How Washington Made the Rich Richer. First of all, welcome. And secondly, look, as I look at this, Jacob, I've met the Coke CEO. He's a lovely gentleman. There's nothing wrong with him. It's not a personal thing, right? So I don't mean to point him out or anyone else out. If the problem is the system, if we allow corporations to rig the system and they buy politicians, of course their CEOs are going to make $25 million while we can't afford health care. Isn't that the real problem?
It is really the problem. I mean, I think we in the United States believe very strongly in individual determination and self-made qualities, but the fact is when you start to look at what's happening to our economy, it's really much more about how the overall system is tilted away from working middle-class Americans and towards those at the very top. I mean, there are two parts to this. One is that we've seen this enormous explosion of income and wealth at the top, and second, we've seen a translation of that money into political power that has meant that those CEOs and others that have done so well have been able to change the rules of the game, have been able to change the public policies in ways to help them. Just look at the huge tax cuts for the very richest of Americans. These have meant enormous economic smart bombs, basically, that have gone to the very richest Americans.
Well, I want to show you two facts in that regard, because I think what you're saying is absolutely critical. First of all, there's 32 giant companies have paid more to their executives than they have paid in taxes. That's amazing. So they're sucking all the money out to the executives, which is natural in a system that rewards that, as long as you get to buy the politicians. Now, even a bigger point to that point is actually a graph of federal tax revenue. When you look at it over time, you see exactly what's happening here. Corporate taxes are sinking like a rock. They don't have to pay as much. We wind up having to pay more because and you see the corporate taxes there are in red, and the payroll tax, which the middle class and all of us pay, is skyrocketing up between 1950 and 2009. That means the middle class, somebody's got to pay the taxes, and it winds up being the middle class and not the corporations.
Well, it's absolutely right, and you were right to say that the United States stands out in this regard. We have the highest levels of income inequality among rich democracies. But what's really striking about this is that at the same time as we've seen the incomes of the top 0.1% more than quadruple, we've seen tax rates on those Americans come way, way down to the point where rich men like Warren Buffett say that they actually think they pay a lower tax rate than their assistants do.
Yeah, and he's put out a challenge to all the CEOs saying, if you can show you pay more than in taxes than your secretary, I'll give you money. And none of them have stepped up because they all pay less than their secretary. It's grotesque. Now, well, Professor Hacker, we have to talk about how we got here and how we're going to get out of it. So good luck. Tell me.
Well, we got here because in the 1970s and 1980s, we saw an enormous organization of business groups that really poured money into politics and into lobbying to try to rewrite the rules of the game successfully. And the only way we're going to get out of it is if we rebuild some of those organizations like labor unions and broad civic organizations that once represented the middle class and were a counterweight to the power of organized business.
You know, I think the huge part of this is campaign finance reform. I think it's almost the only issue. Because as long as rich and powerful people and corporations, and even more importantly corporations, get to pay our politicians, and they're the ones who decide who gets all the money, who can win re-election, well, of course they're going to work for the people who pay them. So until we fix that, all of our laws are going to be rigged against us, aren't they?
Well, I think campaign finance is a huge part of this, but it's also that there's this huge amount of money thrown into lobbying. And I think that doesn't usually get considered by people who are talking about campaign finance. Corporations spend about 10 times as much on lobbying as they do just on financing campaigns. But the way in which money has become so important in politics meant that it's changed the calculus of politicians. They care a lot more than they used to about where the money's coming from, and a lot less than they used to, relatively speaking, about where the votes are coming from. And I think that that's the most fundamental problem, is that we're translating economic might into political might. And that's not what our democracy is about. Our democracy is about equality of the ability to shape what government does, regardless of whether you're rich or poor.
They have absolutely warped our democracy. Corporations are not human beings. They do not have freedom of speech rights, and they're robbing us blind. All right, Jacob Hacker, author of Winner Takes All Politics, thank you for your time, and everybody will be right back.